SMU really has been that dominant ever since the Mustangs joined the ACC. I'll tell you some numbers about that, plus why I expect that dominance to continue with this year's schedule.
You are Locked On SMU, your daily podcast on the SMU Mustangs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Hey, welcome to Locked On SMU here today on this Tuesday. I'm Grayson Singleton. Appreciate you tapping in with us today. Coming up on the show today as well, what are some realistic expectations for freshman wide receiver Jordyn Adams as he joins the SMU football program? Plus, the 2027 recruiting class doesn't seem like it's going to swell to very much bigger. So what exactly should we think about this class now? Is it big enough? I'll tell you why I think it is at the end of the show. So make sure you stick around for that. Subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends. Share this thing, man. Let's try to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the off season. Let's try to get that built up before football season kicks off this year and SMU takes on Florida State on Labor Day. Okay, so the dominance of SMU in the ACC, save for a few blunders, has been pretty remarkable this year. And the question that we have to ask coming into this year now, with this team being what it is can they sustain that level of dominance? Because SMU's play the last few years, even the last year predating the ACC arrival, actually is their blueprint for what they need to do this year to get to where they want to go and get to where we think they can go. So I got this. I may have introduced this to you guys last summer, but I love this. This is the big Phil Steele college football preview that actually one of the listeners at my radio station that I work at delivers everybody on air every summer. But I want to read this to you. SMU is 35-6 at home since 2019. Even stepping up to an ACC competition in 2024, SMU went 8-0. I'll give you another number on that just a second. SMU is 22-2 in conference play the last 3 years and draws the best ACC schedule. So you've got an 8-0 thing that you had in 2024. You lost 2 games, one of which you definitely shouldn't have lost to Wake Forest last year. And then you only lost 1 conference game in the AAC in 2023. Basically what that says is that teams that SMU expects to play on a year-in, year-out basis, they do pretty good against. For that reason, that should give you confidence alone that they can run this ACC gamut. Because you look at some of these teams on the schedule. Louisville, you've played them all 3 years in the ACC. You are familiar now with Wake Forest. You're familiar with Syracuse. And the list goes on. You're going to have a rematch with California, a team that you took to the wire a season ago. So right there, you already have a semblance of familiarity with the ACC. Teams that SMU gets on an annual or somewhat annual basis, they tend to do pretty good against. Which is why in the ACC play, man, I don't have many reservations. I mean, one, because I just don't think the schedule is all that good. I do think Louisville is not going to be as good as they were a season ago prior to all the injuries. You get a lot of these games at home where SMU has been dynamite the last 7 years. Just absolutely dynamite. 33-6. And then how about this for another stat for you in terms of ACC dominance? In that 2024 season, which they didn't duplicate this in 2025, injuries galore on that offense. In 2024, their last fully healthy season, not only did they go 8-0 in conference play, SMU was plus 128 yards per game. Now, sure, that goes a lot to an outstanding defense, and they had a great defense that year. I believe they'll have a good one this year. I don't know if I can say great just yet. But that offense was rolling through people. And if they can get back to that point, which let's examine the characteristics in just a second, if they can get to that point where they are going past people by plus 128 per game, that is a metric that if a college football playoff selection committee gets wind of that and you happen to be on the bubble, that's something to keep an eye on. If they can duplicate that and they have to go to metrics and analytics, that'll be something that stands out and says, you know what? Relative to their competition, they were smoking people. So maybe we should put them in the playoff over somebody else who's on the bubble. Just a thought there. But let's examine the characteristics of an offense this year compared to the offense from a couple of years ago that outgained people by an average of 128 yards per game. You have the same quarterback, 2 years more mature. Not only do you have one running back that's pretty good, you got two. I think they have a better wide receiver core than they did in 2024, which again, I know is a controversial take, but I think they're deeper, I think they're bigger, and I think that there's just more cohesion with everybody in the room when it comes to offense, when it comes to wide receiver. They have a left tackle who could be a first-round pick. They have all five dudes that have been in the program for multiple years. So if you're going to tell me the 2024 offense did that, again, in conjunction with the defense, because you need that too, I'm very confident that this year's offense can duplicate something like that. Now, will it be to the tune of 128 yards per game, outgaining your opponent? Maybe not. Maybe not that number. But I do think they can approximate it. I think that's on the board for this offense. But if you look at how they've dominated, there's one thing I continue to come back to. When you can dominate the people that are in your league that you see every year, and you just continue to be one step ahead. Remember, they have not lost to Louisville yet. They played in a tight one in 2024. They, beat the crap out of, a pretty, carcass type of team. With the injury to Miller Moss, who I guess dropped a plate on his foot the week leading up. You had one of the running backs that were out. Like they were not their full selves last year, and SMU smoked them. But if they can continue to do that, to be good against the teams that they are familiar with, that bodes that bodes well not just for this year, but for the future. Because if you're gonna say, you know what, year over year we're gonna play the same teams, and year over year Rhett Lashlee is going to have something for you, it's a pretty big deal. You look at the schedule this year. This will be another year they play Syracuse. 2024 they blew out Cal, so you're 1-1 against them in your life in the ACC. They blew out Virginia in 2024. They've beaten Boston College 2 years in a row. Why can't they make it a third? And they beat Stanford in 2024. So you look at it from that perspective, and they are familiar with all these teams. They're familiar. Now, Stanford's got a new coach. Cal has since hired a new coach. So we'll see. We'll see if that can continue to hold through changes of leadership and quarterbacks and whatnot. But I feel pretty confident in SMU's previous dominance in the ACC translating to this year and this year's schedule. All right, coming up next here on Locked On SMU, it's a Tuesday edition of the show, and I'm Grayson Singleton. Okay, what should we expect from Jordyn Adams as he returns to the sport of football? I'll tell you about that and tell you what I think about that on the other side. Locked On SMU continues. Support for today's episode comes from Indeed Sponsored Jobs. When workplace chaos hits and you need the right hire, Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps connect employers with candidates who match specific needs like skills, certifications, and location. So less time gets spent searching and more time gets spent finding the right fit. People are finding quality hires on Indeed right now. As a matter of fact, in the minute I'm talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data, worldwide. And usually the biggest difference isn't someone doing more work. It's having somebody who knows exactly what needs to happen and helps everything run smoother. So instead of just adding on to somebody's workload, it's actually something that makes everything more efficient, not more stressful, because obviously that's the goal that you want when you're talking about talent acquisition. And, there's always that time where you get the right person, a right player, or even a right coach, like with the U.S. men's national team got. They got the right coach in Pochettino. Fell last night, but they got the right man to lead the whole thing, and they're taking steps. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. It's less stress, less time, and with more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed-sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. This is a job for Indeed-sponsored jobs. All right, welcome back to the show. I'm Grayson Singleton, locked on SMU on a Tuesday. Again, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you like this content for SMU opinion and analysis. Share it with your friends, share it with your family. Let's get this thing to 1,000 before we get to the football season. Okay, and speaking of the football season, it will be the first for SMU where they welcome a professional baseball player to the team. Now, Jordyn Adams, former Major League Baseball outfielder, he's 25 years old, is joining college with, for what we can assume is a full 5 years of eligibility. Honestly, we'll cross that bridge when we get there at the end of the season. All we know is he has been extended eligibility for this year prior to the NCAA approving the 5 to play 5, so he is on board for at least the 2026 year. After that, shot in the dark. Couldn't tell you. I don't know. But when it comes to Jordyn Adams, we got to ask ourselves, okay, what is a realistic expectation for him? And let's talk about, first of all, what was here before him. So Jordyn Adams joined about a month ago, maybe a little bit more than a month ago. He was welcomed to the SMU program. Before he got there, you already had vets like Yamir Knight, Jalen Hale, Yannick Smith, two of whom came over this year in the transfer portal. A young, flourishing Jalen Cooper, already here. Carterius Brown, Isaiah Robertson. Couple of guys who are going into their second year with the program. And then you had some true freshmen, Ja'Kai Anderson, Alger Miles. Not really sure what you can expect from them this year, but they were there. Now you insert a former 5-star wide receiver who never played football past high school, which was 9 years ago, by the way. He was in the same high school recruiting class as Jamar Chase and Amon-Ra St. Brown, who both obviously are now multi-time NFL Pro Bowlers. So what's a realistic expectation for Jordyn Adams? I think as a speed dude, I think you're going to see him, create separation in certain packages. I think you're going to see a lot of him in terms of strength. Now, what does that mean? I think his best highlights are going to come from him out jumping somebody and for him running through tackles. Because if you get a 25-year-old isolated on a 20-year-old corner, we might have an issue. We might have an issue in terms of the other team. Because there's something called grown man strength, right? I don't know if I'm old enough to have, I'm 24 years old. I don't know if I'm old enough to have what everybody calls grown man strength. Maybe that comes when you're like 30 or 35. I don't know. But Jordyn Adams is more physically developed than a lot of those guys. And I could see Jordyn Adams anywhere. I could see him as an outside receiver. I could see him as a slot receiver. Because if you go back and watch those high school highlights, right, he was doing everything. He was running the whole route tree, in routes, out routes, stop routes, go routes. He was great at all of them. Slants, creating separation, operating from the slot, operating from the outside. So you could deploy him anywhere. This might end up being a case, ladies and gentlemen. This might end up being a case straight up of whether or not he's better than some of these guys. And if he's better than some of these guys, shoot, he's going to play. Because why would you not? Because he's going to be such a physically mature mismatch when it comes to whoever's guarding him. There are not these days a lot of 25-year-olds playing. And I'll tell you where there's one position where there's not a lot of 25-year-olds. It's corner. Because most corners, if they're good enough to go, a lot of them are leaving after 3 years, right? Like those corners that we know, okay, that's a top of the line NFL prospect, are not playing a senior year, which takes them out of college by the time at worst that they're 21. So you might see some 25-year-old linebackers, but I guarantee you they're not running with Jordyn Adams, so that's a matchup you'll likely avoid. You might see it at safety. I mean, hell, SMU has a very old safety, Jimmy Wyrick, this year, but you're not going to see it at corner. That's just a rarity, especially if they're any good. So if Jordyn Adams gets matched up on a physically inferior, physically underdeveloped corner as compared to himself, well, that's favorable toward SMU. Like, I do think SMU is going to play this out. And I do think you're going to see Jordyn Adams. I really, really do. I do think that he's still got his athleticism. I still think he's got his speed and quickness. He's been playing professional sports, so we know he's in shape. I said it about a month and a half ago when this news first dropped, but in case you missed it, I'll say it again. My one concern about Jordyn Adams is how does his body reacclimate to being hit? I don't know how many up against the wall catches he made while he was playing professional baseball, but I don't like there's no simulation for getting hit on a football field, right? Like there it just isn't there. So how does he react and how does he get back up that first time he gets popped by a linebacker? You know, how does his body feel after that first game where maybe he gets 3 or 4 catches for, let's call it 39 yards and gets tackled on every single one of them? How does his body react to that? How does he react to that? What is that next morning going to look like? Because again, this is not something you've done for a decade. He was in the same recruiting class as Jamar Chase and Amon-Ra St. Brown. That was the class of 2018. Okay. So 9 years since he last played any kind of football. 9 years since he strapped on the pads. And again, I think he's still got his skills. Like, you don't unlearn how to catch a football. You're going to be able to catch a football. You don't unlearn how to be quick, especially if you've been playing another sport. I do think his body's in good shape, though. And maybe because it's in good shape, he'll be able to absorb punishment. And he'll react to it just fine. And obviously, we hope that's the case. But I think it really is going to come down to, is he better than these dudes? If he's better than the dudes that are already there, then all of a sudden we get an elevated workload for Jordyn Adams. If he's not, I still think we see him, but it could be a situation where he catches, 20 balls this year or 20 to 27 balls. But if he's really good, we could see him catching upwards of 40. So I think time will tell on that one. Maybe I'll tap in with one of my sources down there and see what I can gather from him. But that's kind of where I am right now. Is he better than the guys that are already there? And that will dictate. I know that's a very cop-out, cliche kind of answer, but I think it's the ultimate holdup is how good is he versus guys who have still been playing football? And then that will dictate what his workload and what his usage and how he's deployed is going to look like. All right, one more segment here, Locked On SMU, on a Tuesday. Appreciate you guys hanging with me today. The 2027 recruiting class, is it big enough to be satisfactory? Not going to parrot for the program, but I'll tell you why I think the answer is yes to close up the show next. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. You got one app for accounting, another for inventory, and another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of managing all these softwares. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone working toward the same goal, and that's true in sports just like it is in business. And again, I want to shout out the U.S. men's national team. fell last night to Belgium, but we saw the strides. We saw the camaraderie. We saw the teamwork time and time again leading into the World Cup and even through their first few matches in the World Cup before it sputtered last night. Everything that they did, every roster move, every person they got on the team, every person that they left off the team was not reactionary. It was the organization having a vision, sticking to it, getting the right coach, and it paid off. Great organizations win because operations matter, and that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's Odoo, odoo.com/lockedon today. All right, let's talk recruiting. Locked on SMU. I'm Grayson Singleton. Appreciate you guys hanging with me today on this Tuesday. Let's talk some recruiting. The 2027 class. And those of you that are on YouTube can see the question on the third bullet point. For those of you that are on the podcast, I will read it to you. Is the 2027 class big enough? Now, we have talked about this a decent amount. Is the 2028 class satisfactory? Should we be concerned? Should, like we're not getting all these commits that we thought we could or thought that we might. Should we be concerned? Before I answer the question, I'm going to ask, I'm going to, actually, this is going to be sobering. Where do you guys think SMU ranks in recruiting in the ACC, in the class of 2027? The answer is a solid last. They have the lowest number of commits in the class of 2027 amongst ACC teams. They have 7. It's a very small class. Now, the average rating of those commits puts them 4th. So they've got good quality, just not a whole lot of quantity. And right now they are sitting in the cellar in terms of the overall class rankings. Now, to recap, Trey Harrelson, 4-star wide receiver, Tyler, Texas. Malachi Ziegler, 4-star quarterback, Benton, Louisiana. Quay Ford, 3-star interior offensive lineman from Texarkana. Braylon Williams, a linebacker. Amari Vickerson, a defensive tackle. Isaiah Udom, a safety. And Buck Randall, a quarterback from Highland Park. That's the class. So now we have to ask the question, is this class big enough? And you have to examine the individual pieces to come to the inevitable yes. This class is big enough. Don't get lost in the fact that it's the 81st ranked class in 2027, according to Rivals. But look at actually what composes the rooms that these guys are going to go in. Trey Harrelson. SMU has no shortage of wide receivers that have eligibility for next year. That's not an issue. Jalen Hale can come back. Yannick Smith can come back. Ymir Knight can come back. And those are the oldest ones. We'll see on Jordyn Adams as well. But then you've got Coop that can come back, Robertson that can come back, Brown that can come back. And then you got the freshman wide receivers from last year, like Miles and Andrews. So, like, that wide receiver room is stacked. They don't need a bunch of wide receivers. Malachi Ziegler at quarterback. Well, Ty Hawkins is going to be the next in line. Then you got Cole Leinert. Then you got Malachi Ziegler. And then you recruited Buck Randall as well. So those are 4 quarterbacks right there that can come back. I think we're good there. Quay Ford, offensive lineman. How many offensive linemen did they bring in last year's class? We're good there. We're good there. Linebacker's an interesting one. But again, the 5-to-play-5 thing has extended the lifelines for some people. So Maizano can come back. Kilgore can come back. Booker is back. Then you've got guys behind them. You're good. Defensive line, Amari Vickerson. Okay, maybe we could have used a little bit more defensive linemen. That's where I would look at and say, okay, I probably would have liked more at D-line with the situation that SMU's in. That's the one, because Akil Washington is out of eligibility. I believe Malcolm Alcorn Crowder, either him or one other defensive lineman, is out of eligibility for sure after this year. Isaiah Udom, okay, you get a 1-for-1 replacement for Jimmy Wyrick. Probably would have liked some more DBs, but that's all right. So is this class big enough? To me, the answer is it's not satisfactorily big enough, but it's functionally big enough. And with the presence of the transfer portal and the fact that transfer eligibility rules have not been changed yet, I think you're okay because you can still plug holes the other way. But SMU took a very, very large class a year ago to the tune that it was a top 25 class in college football last year. SMU took the 24th ranked class in the land and took 24 commits. So when you look at that, okay, we took all those commits last year. We did our work in the portal. We're good. Now, the only caveat to this is that the rosters have expanded from 85 to 105 in terms of scholarships, right? You're no longer handicapped with 85 scholarships. You added 20 more. So when it comes to that, you probably say, okay, are there going to be guys that you just recruit and stash away because you can do it with the extra 20 scholarships? That would be my only holdup on this argument. But outside of that, man, I don't see anything disastrously wrong with this. Now, is this a lower number than I would rather have? Absolutely. Like 7 is kind of a little bit. Like, let's be real. 7 is not an ideal number. But functionally, when you look at the extended eligibilities, when you look at the presence of the transfer portal, there's ways to navigate around it. But they're set up at quarterback. They're set up at wide receiver. They are really set up at offensive line. I mean, you look at it from that perspective, you're thinking, okay, we're good. Set up at linebacker, fine. Defensive line, I still think you probably would like to bring in more. But you look at how the rooms are constructed and the varying remaining eligibility, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. Do I love it? No, of course not. You don't like to see all those recruiting losses, especially after a year that you did that kind of number in 2026. Like, no, we don't want to see that. But do I think it's the end of the world? Do I think it's a negative indictment on the program and on the coaches? No, not right now. In a couple of years, if something like this continues, okay, maybe now we've got an issue. But for right now, given the set of circumstances that we're dealing with present day, I'm okay with. I'm okay with that being for right now. Just as long as we're not repeating this and turning this over year. All right, that'll do it for Locked On SMU. Appreciate you guys tapping in with me on this Tuesday edition of the show. Make sure you check out the Everydayer Club as well. We may have some changes coming to that very soon, so make sure you stay tapped in with that. But that'll do it for Locked On SMU on this Tuesday edition of the show. We'll see you guys on Wednesday, by the way. For those of you on video, we'll send you to the 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. And on audio, make sure you make your second listen of the day Locked On College Basketball. We'll talk to you guys soon. Take it easy.